We begin not only in the largest state in Australia, and perhaps the world, Western Australia, 1 million square miles covering 1/3 of the continent. There's desert on the east, but 7,800 miles of pristine coastline on the west, including the city of Perth, where 8 out of 10 Western Australian citizens live. And just off the coast from Perth and the port of Fremantle is our first and tiniest railroad. Welcome to Rottnest Island, Western Australia, a favorite destination of tourists, boat owners, fishermen, and even surfers. Rottnest, you say? Well, the name comes from this almost tame island native, the quokka, a small wallaby. The cat-sized, grass-eating marsupial looked like a large rat to an early Dutch explorer who called the island Rottnest, which is about how the Dutch would say rat's nest. Quokkas are curious, cute, and everywhere.
They're a nocturnal animal. They not seen all that often on the during the daytime, but at night time they do come out in vast numbers. There's believed to be between 4,000 and 10,000 on the island. And they virtually, this is the only area in Western Australia, or that we know in Australia, where they do exist in such large numbers.
7.5 miles long and 2.5 miles wide, Rottnest Island was once connected to the mainland during the last ice age. Early logging rid the island of most of its trees, and what's left is a sun-drenched mass of sand and limestone.
A little bit like the Northern Territory. If you never go, you'll never know. And it's unique. It's an island paradise, I suppose, you like to put it that way. It's laid back. It's not pretentious, I don't believe. It has a lot to offer people without going overboard. There's a lot to do if you know what to do.
And this is the best way to see the lay of the land, the Rottnest Island Defence Railway. So small, it's more a tramway than a train. Originally constructed to aid the military just before World War II, the railway fell into disrepair in the 1950s. But the government and eventually preservationists rescued the outpost and restored it, relaying rails and rebuilding rolling stock.
They could see the value in re-establishing the railway. It hadn't been used since 1960 when all the ammunition on the island was taken off for dumping. And in 1993 the line was completely relayed.
This is a nice place to go to relax, cycle around, just get away from the world for a few days and just leave the television behind, get on the bikes and just get back to nature.
The views were quite, expansive or extensive is the word. See out to the ocean, see back towards the coast, see Perth, across the island itself, sand dunes.
The Rottnest Railway may be good for sightseeing, but its original existence links directly to the increasingly dangerous world of the late 1930s, as events leading toward World War II encircled the globe. To defend the port of Fremantle from possible enemy attack, Western Australia installed 2 9.2-inch guns. The railway was built to aid the construction, but primarily used to carry ammunition to the guns. Today, visitors can get an up-close look at these giants and get a first-hand lesson in how they operate.
It ran under hydraulic power. There were various hydraulic systems that moved all the different parts of the gun. And in the loading and firing process, different sets of hydraulics had to be turned on and off. The controls for that are the levers there. And to my view, those levers are exactly the same as you see in signal boxes in railways. The breech was closed. This plug, if you like, was slammed back into position, locked into place. They'd recheck the coordinates to make sure it was going to hit the target, and then it would have been fired. This would have had a recoil of about 1.2 meters, about 4 foot, which is pretty small considering the amount of energy being released when the gun was fired. The fact is that it became obsolete during the course of the war. The whole nature of fighting changed. Instead of enemy shipping coming and bombing the ports, aircraft took over.
They were never meant to shoot any further than you could see, because there was no such thing as radar and everything by the time when these were installed in '39, and so they could hit anything on the horizon.
Leslie Thorpe knows. He was a gun engineer manning the hydraulics down below during World War II. And it moves him to see his old post back in shape.
Does an old engineer's heart good to see it, looking like this.
Today you won't find any troops looking for enemy ships off these waters. Instead, visitors to the island can watch surfers as they catch some of the world's best waves. The beaches at Rottnest are home to world-class swells, attracting surfers from around the globe. But the locals have the luxury of enjoying this haven year-round.
We've been coming here on and off for probably 25 years, 27 years. And it's always been very special for us. And so we're back here again today. We're into it. You know, you come over here with guys that you've been surfing with for nearly 30 years, it's very special to come back to the same spots. And so, you know, here we are again, so we'll see how it goes.
You don't have to surf to appreciate the beautiful wonders of Rottnest Island, or the peacocks, or the pheasants, or the quokkas.
Rottnest is part of a West Australian culture too, and having this history here and having the train and everything is important.
We really haven't got much history in Australia. We've got the Aboriginal history, but we haven't got too much of our sort of white culture history. And so to have something like this it's only 7 years ago, but it's good for us to see a bit of history here. Yeah.
Having been up and seen the guns when I was a kid, it's good to come back and have a look at the restoration that's happened.
It was historically interesting too, to go up the train where they originally would have taken up the gun, so it was quite good.
An incredible getaway just a few miles off the coast of Western Australia and the grand city of Perth. This unique island has something for everyone. Almost 70% of the people living in the state of Western Australia were born there. But word of its beauty is spreading, and tourism is the fastest growing industry. Most visitors come from the United Kingdom, Singapore, Japan, and the United States. Southeast of Perth, inland from the coast, not far from the city of Pinjarra, is the town of Dwellingup and the Hotham Valley Tourist Railway. We rode the train during the dry season of Western Australia, when tall brown grasses and hardy green trees dominate the landscape around you. It resembled the American desert Southwest, except for one distinctive sight you definitely would not see in the United States. Wild kangaroos bounding out of the bush, startled by the passing train. Engine driver Malcolm Kramer grips the handles and turns the knobs of the diesel engine on this day, much as he's done for the past 15 years. This English engine he commands is one of only 16 of its kind and is the only one still running in the world today.
I just love them. They're a lot better than the more modern ones, which are all computerized and all those sort of things. And that's way out of my field. The newer type ones were a lot more sophisticated. They you didn't sort of feel as though you were in control of it, although you were, but it was a completely different feel altogether.
But the diesel engines they operate are not this railroad's pride and joy. Hotham Valley has glorious old steam engines as well. Workers are busy in the yard, readying the steam train for another day's work in the Western Australia sun. Just as we were about to leave the station, the district fire marshal decides at the last second that the fire danger is too high to run the steam engine. Even the possibility of a bushfire is taken very seriously in these parts. In 1961, lightning triggered a fire of staggering proportions. It's an event no local will ever forget.
Dwellingup was pretty well most of the town was destroyed. Certainly the railway station was destroyed. There's only a couple of buildings that survived, the hotel and one of the churches. But the bulk of the town was destroyed. The people had to huddle in the middle of the town oval to watch the flames go over the top. But certainly the town is best remembered and most well known throughout the state for that fire. And it's essentially been rebuilt totally over the last 40 years.
So devastating was the fire, it threatened the existence of the towns and permanently closed nearby timber mills. A record of that awful time is available to those who stop at the Dwelling Up station, long since rebuilt with the homes in the towns. As Dwelling Up recovered, so did the railway. Townspeople acquired rusting steam locomotives from scrap yards, bought carriages from salvage companies, and spent 2 years rebuilding them. Reopening in 1976, the reward for their hard work is knowing a vital part of Western Australian history has been preserved.
It's very rich in history, this railway and the whole area, and it's yes, very ideal situation for a tourist railway and to be saved. It moves people who aren't moved to railways. It's a very spectacular sight, and certainly of the many trains I've ridden around the world, it's certainly very similar to some of the best in the world, I'd say.
Whether steam or diesel, the huge Hotham Valley locomotives run into the most unusually small but very real problem: ants, tens of thousands of them. They literally swarm the tracks and can actually interfere with the train's ability to start or stop. Engineer Services Manager Murray Wilmot is one of the Hotham Valley officials who has experience with this ant expressway.
They seem to have a liking for using the railway line as a thoroughfare because it's much easier than crawling over stones and things, I guess. And as a result of which, they sort of meet a sticky end from time to time and cause some confusion with the adhesion of the locomotive to them.
The ants aren't the only ones taking advantage of these rails. Passengers also congregate here, but for different reasons.
I think it's lovely. I think we take vehicle travel for granted and aircraft, but people think more about making a train journey, and I think it's wonderful just cruising along at a very slow, steady pace.
The Hotham Valley Railway impressed an investment group known as the Peel Development Commission, so much so that the Commission will spend $11 million over 6 years to expand and promote the operation.
We think it's part of the state's heritage and its living heritage. Unfortunately, in the past, when things have become defunct, they've been cut up for scrap and you lose them forever. And we think it's important to at least have something here that tells you about your past, and it's very important in the development of the state. And we think for those reasons it's well worth the effort.
We think you'll find it worth the effort to ride the Hotham Valley Tourist Railway, rolling down the tracks from Pinjarra and Dwelling Up in Western Australia.